A historic final Sunday as Coco Gauff and Valentine Vachereau.
They called her a prodigy, the next Serena, the chosen one, the future of tennis. But behind the bright lights and thunderous applause stood a teenager who had to grow up under the weight of the world's expectations. When Coco Gauff stepped onto Wimbledon's grass at just 15 years old, she wasn't supposed to win. She wasn't supposed to make history. Yet she did. And in doing so, she unleashed a storm that would change her life forever. Every swing since that day carried more than a ball. It carried hope, doubt, and the impossible pressure to stay perfect. Social media dissected her every move, the press followed her every expression, and millions waited to see if the miracle girl would ever fall. But Coco didn't want to be a miracle. She wanted to be herself, flawed, learning, and fearless. This is not the story of a prodigy. It's the story of a young woman who turned pressure into power and silence into strength. Because sometimes greatness doesn't wait. It grows, even when the world isn't ready. Coco Gauff was born on March 13, 2004, in Delray Beach, Florida, a place soaked in sunlight, sweat, and the sound of ambition. Her father, Coco Gauff, once played college basketball. Her mother, Candy, a track and field athlete turned teacher. Together, they didn't raise a celebrity. They raised a believer. In a modest suburban home, tennis wasn't just a sport. It was a dream built one serve at a time. Coco's first racket was almost as tall as she was. At 7, she already practiced before sunrise, her father feeding her balls in the quiet stillness of the Florida morning. Neighbors would see a small girl sprinting across the driveway, chasing a future only her family could see. Corey quit his job to become her full-time coach. Candy handled homeschooling, ensuring Coco's mind grew as fast as her game. Their philosophy was simple: discipline before destiny. But it wasn't easy. Money was tight. The tournaments were expensive. Some nights Coco would cry after losing matches she thought she should have won. Her father would simply say, "We don't lose. We learn." Those words became her heartbeat. Every drop of sweat, every missed shot, every early morning wasn't punishment. It was preparation. By the age of 10, Coco was already training at the prestigious Mouratoglou Academy in France, the same one that shaped Serena Williams. For most kids, that would be a fantasy. For Coco, it was a calling. The little girl from Delray Beach was no longer just chasing tennis balls. She was chasing history. And with every swing, the world was getting closer to hearing her name. At 12, Coco Gauff's world began to expand beyond neighborhood courts and family drills. Under the mentorship of Patrick Mouratoglou, the legendary coach behind Serena Williams, she stepped into an environment where talent meant nothing without resilience. Coco was the youngest on every court she played, yet she carried herself like she belonged there. Her backhand was already sharp, her footwork electric, but it was her composure, the calm stare of someone who refused to be intimidated, that made people take notice. By 2018, she reached the Junior French Open final at just 14. That same year, she became the youngest junior U.S. Open finalist in history. But the moment that would change everything came a year later. On the grand stage of Wimbledon, July 1, 2019, a 15-year-old qualifier faced Venus Williams, her idol, the legend who once defined an entire generation. The crowd expected a graceful loss. Instead, they witnessed a revelation. Coco defeated Venus in straight sets. The tennis world erupted. Social media exploded with clips of her wide-eyed celebration. The tears, the disbelief. She had just beaten the woman whose posters once hung in her bedroom. That victory didn't just make headlines. It made history. Suddenly, she was the youngest player to qualify for Wimbledon's main draw in the Open era. Sponsors lined up. Cameras followed her everywhere. The spotlight was blinding. But in the middle of all the noise, Coco whispered to herself, "This isn't the finish line. It's just the first chapter." Because even though she was now the face of a new generation, Coco knew the truth. Talent gets you noticed, but hard work keeps you standing. After Wimbledon, Coco Gauff's life became a whirlwind of flashing cameras, sold-out arenas, and endless questions. Reporters wanted headlines. Brands wanted endorsements. Fans wanted miracles. But Coco wanted balance, a way to stay the same grounded girl who still did homework on flights and prayed before matches. Her rise wasn't a fairy tale. It was a marathon under a spotlight. Between 2020 and 2022, she climbed steadily through the WTA rankings, turning raw potential into refined power. She reached the French Open final in 2022, becoming the youngest Grand Slam finalist in nearly 2 decades. Though she lost to Iga Świątek, her grace in defeat spoke louder than any victory. She told reporters, "I'm still learning. My time will come." The world began to see what made Coco different. She wasn't trying to replace Serena or Venus. She was building her own kingdom, brick by brick, serve by serve. Her game evolved. Heavier forehands, sharper returns, and a mental fortitude that defied her age. Off the court, she used her platform to speak about equality, education, and the importance of faith. She wasn't just playing tennis. She was shaping a legacy in real time. Each tournament added new layers to her story. A semi-final in Adelaide, a thrilling comeback in Doha, a roaring crowd in Miami chanting her name. With every match, she learned not just how to win, but how to carry the weight of expectation with grace. And then came 2023, the year everything changed. A new coach, a new mindset, and an unshakable belief. Coco's eyes no longer carried fear. They carried purpose, because fame had tested her. Critics had doubted her, but Coco Gauff had turned noise into focus, and pressure into precision. As she prepared to enter the US Open that year, one thing was clear. The girl who once asked for permission to dream was now ready to claim her destiny. Every rise carries a shadow. For Coco Gauff, that shadow came not from tabloids or betrayals, but from the invisible weight of expectation. After her breakout success, the cheers began to change tone. Commentators questioned if she was overrated. Social media dissected every loss, every facial expression, every sigh between points. At just 16, Coco was already the target of global scrutiny, her name trending not for victories, but for failures. The 2022 French Open final had ended in tears. She smiled for the cameras, but deep down she felt hollow. The months that followed were restless. Early exits from tournaments, sleepless nights, and the haunting pressure to prove she wasn't a fluke. In interviews, she admitted, "I started to care too much about what people thought. It was like playing against the world, not just my opponent." Her father saw the toll it was taking. Practices grew quieter. Confidence flickered. There were no scandals in the usual sense. No tabloids. No betrayals. But there was an emotional collapse only few could see. The same girl who had once danced on court now stood still after losses, eyes blank, head heavy. Tennis, her safe place, began to feel like a cage. And yet even in her lowest moments, Coco refused to surrender. She still showed up, still trained, still believed, because deep down she knew something vital. Greatness isn't born in the spotlight. It's forged in silence, in doubt, in nights where no one is watching. The fall didn't destroy Coco Gauff. It stripped her down to her core, the place where every champion is reborn. Every athlete faces a crossroad, the moment when talent isn't enough, and belief becomes the only weapon left. For Coco Gauff, that moment arrived in the summer of 2023. After a string of disappointing results, critics said she was done. Another young star who burned too bright, too soon. But Coco didn't argue back. She went to work. Quietly. Consistently. Determinedly. That summer, she brought in Brad Gilbert, a coach known for transforming mental toughness into strategy. Together, they rebuilt everything. Not just her technique, but her mindset. Every loss became a lesson plan. Every frustration, a spark for reinvention. The change was instant and electric. Her footwork grew sharper, her decisions smarter, her emotions calmer. Coco started winning, not by overpowering her opponents, but by outthinking them. She called it playing chess, not checkers. The wins came one after another. Washington, Cincinnati, and then the ultimate test, the U.S. Open. Match after match, she played with fire in her eyes and grace in her heart. When the final ball struck the line and the stadium erupted, Coco dropped her racket, fell to her knees, and wept. At just 19, she was a Grand Slam champion. But this victory was more than a trophy. It was a transformation. As she looked up at the roaring crowd, she said, "Thank you to the people who didn't believe in me. You gave me fuel." That wasn't arrogance. It was liberation. Coco Gauff had turned pain into purpose, and doubt into destiny. The little girl who once feared failure now stood as proof that redemption isn't about changing the past. It's about rewriting the future with courage. At just 19, Coco Gauff had already done what most players spend a lifetime chasing. She didn't just win a Grand Slam, she won the hearts of a generation. Her victory wasn't just about a trophy. It was about representation. A young black woman standing tall in a sport that had long been dominated by others, showing millions of kids that greatness doesn't have a fixed address or a certain look. In every interview, Coco spoke not just of winning, but of purpose. She talked about equality, faith, and giving others the courage to dream louder than their fears. Her words echoed far beyond the court. You can change the world with your voice, even if it shakes. She became a symbol of modern sportsmanship, fierce yet humble, powerful yet gracious. Veteran players praised her maturity. Younger athletes began to model their routines after her discipline. Even legends like Billie Jean King and Serena Williams called her the future, and the proof that the future is bright. But perhaps her greatest legacy lies in how she carries herself. In every smile after defeat, every handshake after victory, Coco reminds the world that success is not just about dominance. It's about dignity. She turned pressure into grace, and youth into wisdom. She didn't replace her idols. She joined them. And somewhere in every young player lacing up their first pair of tennis shoes, there's a little bit of Coco Gauff. The belief that no dream is too early, and no mountain too high. In the quiet moments after victory, when the cameras fade and the noise dissolves, Coco Gauff often returns to what grounds her: faith, family, and gratitude. Despite fame, she still prays before every match. She still calls her grandmother for advice. She still laughs with her mom over breakfast, reminding herself that life is bigger than tennis. Her parents, Corey and Candy, remain her anchor. Never coaches from the sidelines, but guardians of her spirit. Coco once said, "When I lose, my parents don't talk about tennis. They ask what I want for dinner." That's the kind of love that keeps her human in a world obsessed with perfection. She's learned that balance isn't weakness, it's strength. That joy isn't found in trophies, but in the people who stay when the crowd leaves. As she matures, Coco has embraced mindfulness, journaling, and even moments of stillness, practices rare for someone constantly in motion. She's also using her voice to empower others, supporting education and youth programs, encouraging kids to chase dreams without apology. There's a softness in her now, not the kind that bends, but the kind that endures. Her words carry wisdom far beyond her age. Winning is great, but peace is better. Coco Gauff isn't just growing as an athlete, she's becoming something deeper, a symbol of balance, humility, and faith in a world that often forgets to breathe. Because true greatness isn't measured by what you conquer, it's measured by what you nurture. In every era, there's a name that redefines what it means to rise. For this generation, that name is Coco Gauff. From the sunlit courts of Florida to the electric roar of Arthur Ashe Stadium, her story has never been just about tennis. It's been about courage, faith, and the power of belief. She began as a girl with a dream too big for her age. She became a woman who proved that dreams don't care about age. They care about heart. Coco taught the world that pressure can be a teacher, that grace can exist inside power, and that strength can wear a smile. She showed millions that you don't have to be fearless to be great. You just have to keep going. And as she stands beneath the lights, A champion with the poise of a poet, you can feel it. The sense that her journey is still just beginning. Because legends aren't born from victory alone. They're born from faith, from fire, and from the will to rise again. Coco Gauff, the girl who turned pressure into power. If her story inspired you, stay tuned, because greatness truly is still being written.